Oh, good day, everyone. Yes, we hear me. And I prefer to start with my slides instead of looking at my visit here. Curiously enough, what COVID has done is changed everything for what we call fellowship, the way that we are communicating, reaching out to each other. The curious thing is for me, I have been busier this year than I was in the first 2 years, going on 3 years that I've served as a director for this particular district. I'm going to make a presentation, and as I go along, be looking at several things, not only from the beginning of Provis itself, but what's happening here today in Canada. I'd like to thank Caroline and Martin especially, because I've communicated to them several times. And Martin, as you may or may not know, is one of the mentors in our national program of Zoom support. He does an amazing job. I want to thank all of those people who have contributed to your club as being builders and parts of maintaining. You're in your 20th year. I hope later this year to be present at an in-person meeting to present the certificate of congratulations on your 20th anniversary. So I'm going to begin. Whoops. Here's a curious statement. My wife and I were driving by the Toronto airport when my grandson, our grandson at the time, as he would say, not 3 yet, he was in the back seat and he asked a rather profound question. And he said, "Grandpa and Grandma, how did the universe begin?" Well, we certainly couldn't provide him with a definitive answer to his question at that time. I suggest that perhaps when he's older, that he might be able to answer that question himself in the way that would satisfy him. Today, Jude, our grandson, he lives in Tawasin, BC, is 19 years old. And if he asked me today, "Grandpa, how did Probus begin?" I have the answer. I'm going to briefly look at the history of Probus, initiated in England, look at a little bit about it globally, our mission here, particularly in Canada, how we're organized, some of the programs that we've had more recently here in Canada, and our objectives. Very simply, Probus began in the United Kingdom. There were two main clubs that really we consider to be the foundation of Probus. I'll be looking at them, talking about them very briefly in a few moments. In 1965-66, it was out of Rotary that Probus began. It spread to New Zealand in 1974 and over to Australia in 1976. And in Canada here, we began in 1987. The first 4 clubs, which we celebrated 30th anniversary a few years ago, were in Cambridge, Ontario, it's a men's club, White Rock, South Surrey, BC, Burlington, and my own men's club, which is Collingwood. And at that particular time, when it was first initiated, it was the Georgian Triangle Provis Club, but we now referred to as just the Provis Club of Collingwood. This is where it began initially, was in England. And there were 2 particular gentlemen who started Provis. The first I'm going to mention is a man named Fred Carnell. And he lived in Welwyn Garden City in England. He had recently retired, he had commuted daily to London. And when his career was over, he was often with his friends, and some of the former people that he commuted with would go for coffee. He made what he called a very simple idea, had a simple idea. And what he suggested was that they form a luncheon club of people who had retired. These were mainly Rotarians, but once they had retired, they were living in this particular city, it was something that he suggested. A number of them quickly agreed that this would be a good idea. A second gentleman, his name is Harold Blanchard, and he happened to be in Caterham and had a very similar idea. And that was to look for fellowship and also to have a lunch club. And so both these gentlemen were considered kind of the founders, the forefathers of what we call today Probus. So Fred, he started the luncheon club for the promotion of good fellowship among fellow retirees. The campus club, it met with 33 men on May 6, 1965, was organized and supported by the Welwyn Garden City Rotary. Harold Blanchard had similar ideas in the fall of '65 in Caterham, England. and he suggested a monthly lunch for retired men. The local Rotary Club president chaired the first luncheon on March 2nd. This is considered the first meeting of a Provis club, and Harold became the chairman of this new club in May. The idea has spread across the UK, and today there are approximately 1,700 Provis clubs in the UK. What's interesting in my research is both clubs are in existence today. They still exist. The Campus Club, and it was called the Campus Club because where they met, it faced the center of town called the campus. They have retained that name. It's still called the Campus Club. It still is in existence with approximately 80 members. They still meet on the first Thursday of each month. Their annual membership fee is 15 English pounds, but they pay 25 for their lunch. They have the guest speaker, and just like the rest of us, they have quite a few social activities they participate in. The other club, Caterham, is still a club in England. It has, however, become a combined club, and it has approximately 70 members. At the meeting of the Caterham Club, one of the very erudite members suggested the name become Probus, and he took it from the two words professional and business. And the gentleman in the particular meeting agreed this would be an incredibly clever name for this particular movement. And they further discovered more things. The word probus comes from the Latin word probity, which hopefully we can use in describing ourselves being honest and behaving correctly, the quality of strong moral principles. There was also a Roman emperor named Provis, 276 to 282 AD, who had a very strong interest in vineyards, and some of your members may have a similar interest. There is a village in Probus, named Probus in Cornwall, England. And finally, there was a saint who was martyred in 302 or 304 AD, also named Probus. Now, this is rather interesting because Probus has grown to approximately 23 countries around the world. And looking at Australia and New Zealand in particular, you see that they do have the most clubs. Again, Australia and New Zealand have approximately 1,700 different clubs, as is true for the United Kingdom. We have clubs in Belgium, in Germany, South Africa, Mexico. What's perhaps most interesting is that we've now formed a new association called Provis Global. Any of you may become members of that particular group. There's no membership fee. It's simply a group of people who get together to talk over things of interest from their own clubs in their own country. Right now, it was begun about 2018. I became a member. We have approximately 400 members internationally with over 100 people from Canada. Any of you can go to globalprobus.org and you could join. Last month, I was in a meeting with 93 people, and they were from Belgium, India, New Zealand, Australia, England, Ireland, Canada. It was amazing presentation by particularly a group in Australia. Next month, we are hosting or having a group from Belgium who will be describing what's happening in Probus in that particular country. This is also very interesting. I mentioned that Australia and New Zealand have approximately 1,700 clubs, as is true for the United Kingdom. We in Canada have 256 clubs with approximately 40,000 members. But here's the difference. The number, the size, average size of the clubs in these other countries, you can see on the screen. The United Kingdom, only 57. Belgium, 50. Germany, 70. Japan, 26. Australia, only 72, New Zealand, 93. What is really interesting about this, am I doing a little bit of research again, the largest club in Australia has 248. The very largest in New Zealand, 208. The largest in Canada is a club called Beaver Valley. And with your close to 550, it has 200 more members than the second largest club in Canada, which is Vancouver Men's Club. with approximately 350. Our first club here was started in Cambridge, Ontario in 1987. I want to briefly describe the contributions of three gentlemen. The first is John R. Morris on the left, Bert Klinkhammer in the center, and Bud Crooks. It was John Morris who, when he visited New Zealand, Australia in 1981, became familiar with what was happening through Rotary to create clubs for retired people called Probus. And he became very intrigued with it, but he made some very strong connections, especially to the first club in Australia called Hunter's Hill, which again is still in existence today. It's become a combined club. And he met a man there in that club named Cliff Johnstone. John was very interested in the possibility of having Probus come to Canada. In 1985, Cliff Johnstone was visiting Toronto from Australia, and John was living in Oakville. After his meetings, he met with John, and they discussed in detail some of the ways that we might promote Probus here in Canada. John was given pamphlets on how to form a Probus club. Over the next 2 years, he went to 43 different Rotary clubs, promoting the idea of how Probus could be create clubs in different parts of Canada. It was Bert Klinkhammer who was at one of those meetings, and he's the gentleman in the center there. And he took the baton and brought it here to Canada and formed the first club here in Canada, March 17th, 1987. It was also a men's club. To the right is Bernard Bud Crooks. He was also a tourist in New Zealand, Australia. And in New Zealand especially, he was just amazed by, you could actually belong to a club without having to raise or go out and get money for some cause. As a Rotarian, this is what he'd done most of his life, and he was really intrigued with the idea of starting something like that here in Canada. It was 1987. He was living here in Collingwood, and he started the club in October of 1987. I mentioned earlier that the club was initially called the Georgian Triangle Club, and Bud was incredibly influential in our area. He promoted 15 different clubs through our area, from Barrie, Midland, Penetanguishene up to Bracebridge. He was instrumental in starting the club at Port Elgin, called the Saugeen Shores today, over on Lake Huron. And believe it or not, he started a club, or initiated helping people form a club in Mexico. Bud was an amazing man. I was fortunate to meet him prior to his passing 2 years ago. I interviewed he and his wife, June. Together in 1996, they had made the very first website for Probus internationally. If I go back very quickly, back to John Morris and Bert, they recognized in 1988 there was a very important thing to do, and that was namely to establish that Probus needed to be copyrighted, had a trademark, and be registered. So both our name and our logo was done at that time. They also realized that insurance was important to carry on activities that the clubs might participate in. And so they were actually able to get our third-party liability insurance we've had ever since 1988. And it's just amazing the contribution that all three of these people have made. For some reason, I'm frozen. So, who are we? Well, local, national, international. We are an association of retired people who come together in non-political, non-sectarian, non-profit, autonomous clubs which provide regular opportunities for members to meet others in similar circumstances with similar levels of interest, make new friends, and maintain and expand their interests. The highest honor that we can bestow here in Provis in Canada is the John R. Morris Award. And in fact, the first recipient of that in 2006 was Bud Crooks. And again, I was very fortunate to meet him prior to passing. So he did so much to develop Provis in our area particularly. Here's a brief look at where we stand today in Canada. I have the 2020 numbers here for the simple reason that certainly COVID has affected membership, and depending how clubs and different clubs have handled it differently. Some clubs have collected a small fee, other clubs haven't. Basically, though, this is where we stood at the beginning of COVID. You can see approximately 40,000 members with 256 clubs, a high concentration here in Ontario. What's curious, though, if you look at the bottom, just above 256, we have one club in the United States, which is part of Provis Canada. And that's because Rotary does not, crosses international borders. And so that particular club is called Central Aroostook in Maine. They only have 27 members, but they have belonged to our Provis Canada for a long time. And so when we look, if you look at some of the interests there that we do now, curiously enough, I'll point out Alberta, 8 clubs. Beaver Valley has more members in total than those 8 clubs. This is our own particular Ontario District 7. It was only created in 2017. I was just ending my role as the president of my men's club, and they were looking to see about creating a new club, our new district, which took up to a year for the Government of Canada, because we have to be approved by the Government of Canada for any constitutional changes. We are registered with Industry Canada. So this was in September of 2017. And as you see, there are now 31 clubs. When I came in, there were 28. So we've added 3 clubs in the last 3 years. One of those clubs was Four Seasons, which has grown to a large size as well. They're over 300. We also have Own Sound, which I was at the founding meeting, which we started in 2018. At their foundation meeting, they had 170 members. They're now up to 250. And they're thinking of doing a second club in Own Sound. We also have a second club in North Bay called Blue Sky. What's interesting with this particular group too is that the oldest combined club here is actually Perry Sound as a combined club that goes back to 1994. My men's club, as I mentioned, is the oldest club in our district. It's the 4th club in Canada, 1987. The 3 new clubs I mentioned. You were, Beaver Valley was part of Ontario District 5 until that time. And so this new district was created in 2017. This is how the executive looks today. There are 13 of us across Canada. As volunteers, we also create an executive of 5 people, of which I am the vice president at this time until May of this year. We have a managing director, Reg Wynot, who has been part of Probus since literally the 90s. And Gordon Hutton is our financial manager at this particular time. The other district directors are on the screen. So there are 3 districts in British Columbia, 1 in Alberta, 1 that represents Northwestern Ontario, although at this point we do not have a club in that particular area, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. Ontario District 6, 543. And again, Ontario has, of course, the largest number. The breakdown actually in clubs, I didn't mention earlier, is kind of interesting to note. There are 43 women's clubs, 39 men's clubs, and 174 combined clubs. The very first women's club it was in Berlin, in Burlington in 1990, was club number 17. But of more interest was the first combined club, and that was in Alliston, Ontario in 1988. Previously, as early as 1987, the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled that women could not be excluded from Rotary. It took 2 years for Rotary International to accept that, but in 1988, in Alliston, Ontario, which is where John R. Morris and his wife, June, were living. They formed the first combined club in Canada. And that already, as I say, was 1988. There are now 3 clubs in Alliston. Another thing to note, the initial clubs were pretty well all sponsored by Rotary. Today, clubs now can be sponsored by either a Rotary club or an existing club. Still over 1/2 of the clubs in Canada were actually sponsored initially, were sponsored by an existing a Rotary club. The newer ones, though, more recently have been all pretty well nominated by or sponsored by an existing club. This is what I and the other directors what our duties are. Manage the affairs of a corporation, act in good faith, diligence, disclose conflicts of interest, comply with all of our articles, bylaws, acts, assist in promoting, developing new clubs, provide advice and guidance to clubs, serve on special committees. But what I think everybody should be aware of is there is only one constitution for all 256 clubs in Canada. Bylaws can be, of course, individual. You are autonomous in the sense that you run your own affairs, but nothing could contradict that particular constitution, which applies to all clubs. Here is a challenge. Visit district clubs once in 3-year term. Obviously, since last year, I think my last visitation was March. I have behind me, when I take my picture back onto the screen, you will see I have 6 framed certificates of congratulations for clubs that may be celebrating their 15th year, their 20th year, their 25th year. Of course, we have not been able to be there to present the congratulatory certificates. And I was hoping again this year, that meaning in the fall, to host a conference with all of the clubs in our district. I have actually two sections. I call it the northern section, which I created when I became the director for our district, and the southern has 17. I am hoping to have all 31 clubs together. There are 31 in our district, and we serve as liaisons for the clubs in Provis, Canada. The whole purpose, why we exist, there's only one reason: to develop it, to create a national organization where more and more people have an opportunity to join the wonderful opportunities that a Provis club can offer retired women and men throughout Canada. Just very briefly looking at some of the growth. You can see in the initial years there, and over time we've climbed. Now we have climbed to approximately the 256 of today. The sad thing is, again, what has COVID done? Well, we had our first 2 clubs this year already in January, February. It was Bob Cage in Ontario and Port Stanley, and that was it. We had 3 other clubs just in Ontario District 2 that were in the process of creating a new club. In other parts of Canada, especially in British Columbia, we're kind of having new clubs. We've been averaging 8 new clubs a year, but we're on hold, obviously. Some of the things we've done more recently, our district, District 7, Ontario District 7, was created, as I mentioned, in 2017. As a board of directors, we've initiated a 3-year membership growth plan. We report on a regular basis, quarterly, to all of our directors about what's happening in each of our districts. The intent is to try to do a district conference at least every 2 years, if not once a year. We've established the National Provis Month, which I mention again in a moment, and our website, which again I will comment on in just a moment. Our objectives: help clubs through this period, increase the use of our website, marketing, recruitment, communication within the clubs, among the clubs. One thing that Caroline and is well aware, another membership of your club, whenever your newsletter is sent to me, I share it with the other 30 clubs. So the 31 clubs in our district, we're asked to share, to get ideas about not only speakers, but also the kinds of best social activities that you engaged in. What do you find successful? I literally could write down 200 different activities that are being somewhere within our district. It's amazing how many different ideas, different clubs. No two clubs are the same. It's just beautiful. A number of years ago, about 4 years ago, we started for license plate for the frame to go around it. It is approved in all provinces in Canada. There are parts of the country that some of the provinces have really taken on to this whole idea. Our particular district has not, but that again is why we're all different, and we accept that. I may ask again in another few months if people are interested. The only problem is I need a minimum of 200 orders from a number of clubs in our particular district for me to follow up on this. Another thing that we're doing, of course, is our new website. It was developed between 2017 and 2018. Its main purpose, really and truly, its main purpose is information for people who are not aware of Probus, and hopefully find out where clubs exist and a contact of maybe getting an opportunity to join a club in their particular area. With that, we are looking, of course, at why we exist. In one word, truly and truly, it is fellowship. And from that fellowship, we can develop friendship. And out of our friendship, let's have a lot of fun. The whole intent is fun. March has been traditionally, it started in 2013 by Steve Campbell, who is from Shediac Shores in New Brunswick. He's also a past president of Provis Canada. He suggested that we take a month and reflect on who we are and celebrate. And due to, now this will change this year for two reasons, we also included April as a month to celebrate Probus month. And what happens? COVID. Well, we're not waiting for the return of too many snowbirds. And unfortunately, for myself, I've gone to flag raising in Wasaga Beach for the last 3 years. This will be the first time in 4 years. I've had in Collingwood for our 10 clubs, we've announced and had the town declare Probus month in Collingwood. It just didn't seem to be of any particular reason to do it this year. Very sad, but it is something that hopefully we can still celebrate in our own ways in the coming years. This is a present slogan that we have right now. It's called Get Connected, Stay Connected. The first slogan used by Provis Canada was actually, every community in Canada needs a Provis club, and that comes from John Morris. Other ones that your club may use or another club uses is our strength is fellowship, our success is participation, and be a friend, bring a friend. That was also Steve Campbell from New Brunswick who made that particular suggestion. And that is that. I'm sorry, I messed up some of my my papers. They're everywhere. However, if there are, I know for time, if there's any, if somebody does have a question, they can either put it on chat or maybe just do or unmute themselves. I don't pretend to have answers to everything. What I do is I will find out an answer to something if I'm not aware of it right now.
So Bob, this is Martin. If I may ask a first question. I'm still new to Canada, so bear that in mind. I was curious to note that Provost did not appear to have any presence in Quebec. Why would that be?
At the time, what happened was called the Language Act. And it really came down to that. In order to be approved in Quebec, Provis Canada basically was told that everything we do should be in 2 languages. And there were clubs that were starting to meet together. And there are some clubs, but they're not technically formally a part of Provis Canada. It became we're all volunteers and we just don't have the means to do that. We don't have people who can do our newsletter, can make a communications thing. And so it goes back to that period in Quebec when if something was formally going to be introduced as a term that we use, because we are registered with Industry Canada. However, this is my understanding that it came down to an issue of language. And I mean, New Brunswick is bilingual. We're bilingual. There are places that are still where it is, but Quebec, there was a problem having it being recognized by Quebec as a club that could be, you know, identified that way.
Interesting. Thank you.
Curious enough that, and if I could be corrected, but this is the information I've been given in the past. And the only thing I mentioned is, like I said, I have 3 booklets here, and I think I missed half of what I was going to say. My wife has always told me, "You say too much." I don't need to talk more. But there are some, I know I left out some fairly significant things. I have fun researching it. Like I said, I actually have 2 binders. So I have tons of notes. I would really like to have said more about Bud Crooks and John Morris, perhaps, but Bud Crooks. It's amazing what these people have done. And it's only because they want something better for the rest of us. But you people who are listening, you people are part of that club. We thank, right now, Caroline and Marion and the people who are the builders and kids. But the truth is, as one of your members said earlier, it's the future. And the future means the new members joining you. We saw the list of all those people, new members. Those are the ones who are going to be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Those are the people that we need on your management committee to carry on. They will be the future.
Yes, definitely. And I just wanted to mention that to everyone that Bob organizes these wonderful Zoom meetings with the other club presidents. And I find that very useful to exchange information. And
you will be there with Martin on Friday of this week with 31 club presidents, and specifically looking at hybrid meetings, but also some other information. So, yeah, Friday morning we will get an opportunity to meet people up in North Bay, Bracebridge, Gravenhurst. Wow, that club from Beaver, is that the big one? Is that the club? It's the biggest in the world, Beaver Valley.
That's well, our cross to bear.
I'd like to present you with this honorarium. We've enjoyed this wonderful journey through Probus International and our local Probus clubs in Ontario and right here in Thornbury. And thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome.
This is the wrong way around. Usually it's Bob who presents certificates. So
that's right. That is correct. And I will later this year, that's for sure. Okay. Congratulations on the celebration of your 20th anniversary.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely.
It is very interesting.
I'm in, which is annoying.
All right. Just maybe a last pointer. We're not done yet with Provis. In a month's time, our next meeting, we will have a presentation by Barb Whedon about the Events for Life organization.
Okay. Okay.
Martin, are we going to we're not going to bother with the chat rooms because we figured that it's going to be run on too long. Is that correct?
That was the initial idea. Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you to everyone who joined us today. And I see there are a few chats at the bottom there, so we can have a look at what people are saying.
Oh, it's only an hour.
Yeah, I know, but they expected it to go longer.
Yeah. I know. I know.
While I have your attention, Bob, can I ask one more question? And it has to do with the non-profit status of Probus. There are opportunities, in particular in information technology, where companies offer their products and services for free if you can demonstrate that you are a non-profit. How would we go about doing this? Are we registered that we can tell them, go to this government website and you'll find us registered as a non-profit?
We are registered as a nonprofit corporation. The access to that, as I say, we are registered with Industry Canada. We do, Provis Canada does do an income tax return to CRA every year. Of course, local clubs don't, but we do. So we are registered as a a not-for-profit corporation. So, but the access to that, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but we are registered as a not-for-profit corporation with Industry Canada.
Right, that's the umbrella organization, but each club is not.
Because each club then, it does not, no, again, the only advice, well, again, I don't think I'm answering your question directly, but bottom line is, as the blanket group or for everybody, Provis Canada is registered officially with the government. Everything that we do has to be, we made one change last year, and that had to do with membership. We're still waiting for a final response from the government on that one. It took a year to create that new district, Ontario District 7, of which we're part of. You know, we were formerly in 5 in this area, and I had clubs from District 2. So our managing director does an incredible job of the communication to the government on a regular basis, but I can't answer beyond that at this moment.
Thank you.
And Bob, I had a sheet a long time ago about how to celebrate this National Probus for March or April. Could you forward that to me again? Yes. Just some ideas that.
Yep. Yes.
I mean, we probably can't do anything, as you say, during this time, but for next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Normally, the past president is the person who does it nationally. I guess just with where we are, what's happening. But I'll again send that to you, okay. Caroline. What usually the expectations, what the kind of thing. Like I said, this would have been my 4th year for the flag raising at the City Hall in Wasaga Beach, and each club individually can do things with the, obviously in any way they want to celebrate. But it's amazing how many clubs do have done in the past quite a few things. Just surprising. Again, why we share ideas is because we're not all smart enough to think of everything.
So
just
true.
like there was one Australian who said that Probus is the best thing that England ever exported. And it's the word of mouth is what communicates. It isn't necessarily reading that textbook. It's when somebody sits down with you or you visit, you travel, you learn about, it's amazing. That's the beauty of it. Yes. That's why I hate missing going to meetings because no two clubs are the same. I did speak once briefly at Beaver Valley 2 years ago when the young lady who does the photography was giving her talk. Actually, there was a desperation. Marion probably remembers because the girl was late. Her mother came and they were almost asking me to stay an extra half hour and talk. And I had no idea what I'd talk about. But that was when the young lady who does the photography here from Collingwood when I was at that. But it doesn't matter. I could go to 4 different clubs in Bracebridge, none are the same. 10 clubs in Collingwood, none are the same. That's why we need to communicate and work with each other to get ideas.